Well, hello there, you scrub lords. As many of you know, with update 1.87 locked on, we have seen the introduction of radar as a new mechanic to some of the air and ground vehicles we see in the game. This guide aims to teach you three things. 1. How to set up your radar. 2. How the radar systems work on aircraft and ground forces. And 3. Some tips and tricks to using them in combat. However, before we get started, I wanted to let you guys know a couple things. I have generated a new link to my Discord down below, which you can join if you have any further questions regarding this or other topics. Simply follow the instructions provided by the bot and agree to the rules to get access. In addition, a squadron has been set up by my Discord members to help people grind out the new squadron reward vehicles. So if you are interested, join the Discord and ask around for more information about that. With that all out of the way, let's get started. After navigating your way to the Controls tab in the War Thunder menus, you can find the controls for your radar under the Weaponry subsection. Now you can bind all of these controls, or if you are short on buttons, the three that you will be using the most are Switch Radar Search On and Off, Change Radar Scope Scale, and Lock Radar Target On. In my case, I have enough buttons to bind all of the controls, so for me, I bind the controls as follows. Radar On and Off is set to the 6 key, Change Radar Mode is set to the 7 key, Change Radar Search Mode is set to the 8 key, Radar Scope Scale to the 9 key, and Switch Radar Indicator Types is set to Shift 0, since 0 key is already being used by the TOMAHAWK function. As for locking onto targets, I prefer to set that to a spare, easy-to-reach mouse button, as you will be using this function a lot. And for the Select Radar Target Lock-On, I simply use the same button with Shift added to it. Remember, this is simply how I do it. If another setup works better for you, let others know in the comments section what you have set up. Especially you console players, as I know you guys are a bit strapped for buttons. Now you will have to bind these controls as of update 1.87 twice, once for tanks, once for planes. Which seems annoying at first, but this is done to allow you better flexibility in adjusting your radar controls to better fit multiple control setups. For example, if you fly planes, the shift key may not be available, as that takes up either your throttle or pitch down for your elevator. However, if your control layouts don't interfere, I recommend keeping as many controls the same as possible to avoid confusion during the heat of the battle. Now that you have your controls set the way you like them, let's explain how radar works within the context of War Thunder. In War Thunder, there are two types of radar modeled: search radar and tracking radar. Most radar-equipped vehicles have both. However, early aircraft radars are almost exclusively search-only, while some SPAAGs only have tracking. Let's start with the most commonly used type, search radar. When most people think of radar, they're actually thinking of search radar. This is the type of sensor that scans an area looking for a radar return signal or ping. The pings are represented on your screen after switching the radar on as green dots. The light or green projection moving back and forth shows where your radar is actively looking at any given moment. It's also a pretty handy way of telling whether or not you forgot to turn on your radar. That dark green section we will get back to later. Just know for now that different vehicles and aircraft tend to have differing radar capabilities. On most aircraft equipped with search radar, the area is scanned most commonly within a 180-degree sweep in front of the aircraft. However, this can vary between aircraft quite dramatically, and every radar works a little differently than the other. So get to know your radar's specific intricacies and limitations to make best use of them. Speaking of intricacies, let's talk about the controls which change the view and behavior of the search radar. Notably, the Change Search Radar Mode, Scope Radar Scale controls, and the radar indication type. First up, the Change Search Radar Mode. This control is most commonly used on aircraft equipped with radars that have wide fields of view. This control essentially allows you to switch between a slower yet wider default sweep on the radar to a narrower, faster, and longer ranged sweep. Useful in combination with the next control for spotting contacts at greater ranges. For the Scope Radar Scale control, this simply allows you to set the maximum distance your radar screen will display out to. Most vehicles can cycle through anywhere between 2 to 5 range settings, with some having ranges bigger than any map in the game. This can be useful for increasing your situational awareness and can increase your vision out beyond your immediate area, allowing you to plan ahead and better prepare yourself for incoming threats. The final thing to look at here are the radar indication types, which simply switches the type of radar display you are looking at. You have two screens to choose from. Your default circular screen, which we will refer to from here on out as circle radar, and the new screen you will see here, which I will refer to as square radar. In the square radar mode, the screen displays your radar's entire field of view in the shape of a square, as the name implies, with the top of the square being farther away from you, and the bottom of the square representing the very center of the circle radar. So in other words, the entire bottom line of the square radar represents your exact position. This mode I have found to be useful when trying to track multiple incoming targets at long range when they are on the edges of the radar screen and kind of close together. This makes tracking their positions at a distance much easier to see. However, the circle radar is what you will use 90% of the time, so if you don't care for this mode, you don't have to really use it. Ground-based radars work in almost the exact same way, the difference being that they scan in a 360-degree arc when not using the box radar mode. A thing to note is that these radars do have blind spots located directly over them, so an aircraft coming from a high-angle dive may not be spotted. The closer an aircraft gets to your position, the greater the chance of it wandering into that blind spot. Now that we have that covered, let's move on to the tracking radar. Now, tracking radar does exactly what it says. It tracks return signals and often helps by providing lead indicators for your weapons. This is not responsible for finding targets. This system is only here to help you shoot stuff down. Not all radar-equipped aircraft have tracking radar, but all radar-equipped SPAAGs have them in some capacity or another. Remember that dark green area I mentioned earlier on some of the radars? This area is what displays the maximum range of your tracking radar, meaning that any aircraft within this dark green area can be locked onto and tracked. This is not representative of the range at which the lead indicator appears for your weapons. Locking a target outside of your weapon's effective range only creates a box around the target, showing the difference in speed and their distance in relation to the tracking radar. Now, I know that many people have been having issues locking up specific targets in third person. I have personally found that using the gun sight to lock a specific target, then switch back to third person to engage, to be a lot more reliable at longer distances. Once the locked target has closed within weapons range, a lead indicator will appear, and then you can in most cases service the target with a high degree of accuracy. Also keep in mind that if a locked target leaves the detection zone, the marker will detach itself from the target and will eventually lose lock. This is mostly a problem for aircraft with narrow vision cones on their tracking radars, like the MiG-19 PT. As I hinted at earlier, some SPAAGs are only equipped with tracking radars. The two current vehicles set up in this way are the US M163 VADS and the Italian Sidam 25. Both of these vehicles have no search radar functionality whatsoever, so don't try to turn it on, it doesn't work. They do, however, retain the ability to lock onto aircraft they can visually identify. So for these two vehicles, you are reliant on the good old-fashioned Mark I eyeball. To lock targets in these vehicles, I use the gunner sight almost exclusively before switching back to third person to service the target. Now that you know how the radars work, let's move on to how to use it in the field. For World War II era aircraft equipped with the search radar, I'm afraid you won't see much use out of it, as in arcade and realistic battles, both sides are equipped with markers that render the radars rather pointless. In Sim, however, they can be critical to helping you get your situational awareness, and can allow you to spot and pounce on incoming enemies before they even realize they've been detected, allowing you a better opportunity to plan your engagements. For most jets, it's a very different story. The addition of the tracking radar in addition to your search radar will allow you to better line up and hit difficult deflection shots from longer distances with less ammo wastage. Even simply being able to physically see the position of the enemy aircraft on the horizon will go a long way to helping you out in planning your engagements. This is great for boom and zoom aircraft like the T-2, where they want to take advantage of their 20mm cannon being able to spew out as much ammunition as possible within the shortest amount of time. Or with aircraft like the MiG-19 PT, which have very, very hard-hitting guns and don't have a lot of ammunition, the radar allows them to make their shots count a lot easier. For ground forces, we're going to be doing something a little bit different. Top-tier SPAAs tend to fall within one of two roles. That is point defense or long-range area denial. The point defense vehicles tend to include vehicles such as the M163 VADS, the Sidam, Tunguska, Shilka, those sorts of vehicles with shorter ranges, technically also including the Flakpanzer Gepard and all of the 35mm Oerlikon armed SPAAs. The second category, long-range area denial, tends to include the Sergeant York, the Tunguska with its missiles, and the automatic. So the point defense SPAAs are pretty straightforward. The idea is to destroy the enemy aircraft within close proximity to you after they've already reached the airspace to start affecting the battle, aka dropping bombs, shooting down other planes, etc. The first role of point defense is really to scare the aircraft into either missing his attack run or either damaging him such that he pulls away from the battle and retreats. If you have done either of these two things, you have accomplished your role. However, shooting down the aircraft is easily the next best thing. Now, long-range area denial is a little bit different. With longer-range SPAAs, the idea is to destroy the enemy forces before they even get within your airspace. Vehicles like the Tunguska with its missiles and the automatic with its very, very long-range 76mm MOM shells are perfect for destroying enemy aircraft at extreme ranges, including helicopters. Now, there are a couple of strategies that aircraft can use to evade these radars, because objects like trees or buildings don't stop radar unless the radar is actually right up against the building. Now, notice how I said aircraft and not helicopters. Because of the way that Doppler radars see the world, they can only detect objects that either compress wavelengths of light or extend wavelengths of light. If an aircraft is doing neither of these and traveling perpendicular to the radar, i.e. directly from left to right, and not gaining distance towards the radar but not moving away from it, then the radar has a difficult time keeping track of that object moving through space. Because of the helicopter blades on a helicopter, there's almost always an object coming towards the radar and moving away from it, i.e. helicopters are not able to utilize this effect as a result. But if you're in a plane and you're traveling perfectly perpendicular to a radar, you will find that he will have a hard time tracking you. As you can see in this clip, where my buddy Scavenger is flying in a perfect circle, or at least as to the best of his ability, around my SPAA. And you will find that, well, I have difficulty holding a lock for more than about a split second at a time. And by the way, this works at any distance. Just keep in mind that at a certain point, you're going to stop being perpendicular to the radar and start traveling away from the radar, even at a diagonal angle. And even if you're traveling away from the radar at a diagonal angle, the radar can still pick you up. Remember, it is only able to pick objects up that are moving away from it or towards it. So pilots, use this to your advantage if you want to avoid radar and being shot down from incredible distances. Now, this doesn't, of course, protect against direct fire that is manually aimed, but at the very least it can give you a better chance of surviving and avoiding lock for longer periods of time. As far as ground utilization of the radar, it's actually pretty simple. Find the enemy aircraft that you would like to lock onto. I prefer switching to the gunner sight before trying to lock onto the target. Lock the target. If there is no lead indicator, then that means the target is not within effective range. I would also wait until the target is moving in a sort of straight line, of course moving towards or away from your SPAA before opening fire, and basically ambushing the enemy aircraft before they realize that you're there. The last thing you want to do is give away your position too early, unless that is, of course, you are playing one of the longer-range SPAAs in which you specialize at those longer distances. The Tunguska's missiles, or the automatic especially, are much better at longer range than they are at closer ranges. So with that, I hope that this guide has helped you all in coming to grips with the new radar mechanics and getting them set up and working. If you have any further questions, please leave them down in the comment section below, and if you have questions beyond that, I encourage you to join my Discord server using the link down below. Without further ado, this has been Many Miles Away. Keep your tracks checked, keep your bindings in place, keep around in the tube, and I will see all of you guys in the next video.